It's time for another episode of Sleep Dose with your host, the Sleep Guy. So lay back, listen in, and get ready to explore the mysteries of sleep.
Welcome back to another episode of Sleep Dose, Deep Sleepers. Sorry about that. One more time. I dropped my remote control.
It's time for another episode of Sleep Dose with your host, the Sleep Guy. So lay back, listen in, and get ready to explore the mysteries of sleep.
Welcome back to another episode of Sleep Dose, Deep Sleepers. On this week's episode of Sleep Dose, we have Sivia Gover. On this week's episode of Sleep Dose, we talk to Sivia Gover. She's the author of several books, including Joy in Every Moment and The Mindful Way to a Good Night's Sleep. She's a certified dream work professional and also heads up the education direction and is also the education director for the Institute for Dream Studies. Okay, one more time.
It's time. It's time for another episode of Sleep Dose with your host, the Sleep Guy. So lay back, listen in, and get ready to explore the mysteries of sleep.
On this week's episode of Sleep Dose, we talk to Sivia Gover. She is the author of several books, including Joy in Every Moment and The Mindful Way to a Good Night's Sleep. She's a certified dream work professional and the education director for the Institute of Dreams. Learn more or contact Sivia by clicking on the links in the description, and also be sure to visit us at sleepguycoaching.com. Welcome all. I'm real excited to have Sivia Gover with us today. I'm going to do plenty of editing, so don't worry about the way this sounds right now. It's going to be very good later on. So we're going to have Sivia Gover with us today, and I'm real excited to have her on. It's taken a little while to get the coordination going and make sure that we have that meeting of the minds, and today is that day. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Sivia Gover. Hello, Sivia. How are you today?
Hi, I'm well, thank you. And I'm real happy to be here to talk about some of my favorite topics with you.
Well, I've heard so much good things about you. We have a mutual friend in Justina Lasley, and I understand that you are also a very inspirational, well-rounded and knowledge person in dreams. And, you know, the focus of this channel is sleep. And so dreams is just adjacent. It's sleep adjacent, as they say. So by joining us today, I know that I did speak to you previously about possibly talking a little bit about one of your blogs. I know that one of your blogs were about bad dreams, and you specifically talked to someone that was having bad dreams. I'm not going to go into the person's name or anything, but you did advise them that they need to turn around their interpretation of bad dreams. And I said, you know what? That sounds like my nightmare episode, because so many people call them nightmares. And Justina was the first to tell me, hey, Tom, maybe we should stop calling them nightmares. There's more to learn. So you care to tell me a little bit about how that blog came about and your response to when people come to you and say, I had a nightmare, I had a bad dream?
Sure. Nightmares, first of all, I'm so glad that in your introduction, you mentioned that dreams are a part of sleep. I find it very frustrating that dreams are usually not just adjacent to sleep adjacent, but cast out altogether, whereas dreaming is about a quarter of the time we spend asleep. And as your listeners know, we sleep 1/3 of our lives, so it's a lot of time. So the dreams come in all varieties, including beautiful, blissful dreams, and also scary dreams, disturbing dreams, and outright nightmares that wake you up because you're so afraid. So as you mentioned, people write to me, people come to me for dream work sessions specifically to talk about their nightmares, their scary dreams. And what they find is that all dreams come to us in the service of health, help, and healing, especially, I would say, nightmares.
Mm.
So, go ahead, yeah.
That's very interesting. You see, some people have these nightmares, and they also get night terrors,
Yes.
and then they conflate the two.
Yes.
And as a sleep coach, I know, and as a dream expert, we have this in common, that we have to explain to people it's not the same thing.
Not the same.
One is a medical condition that can be caused by some other factors. And the other is something that is happening with your mind while you're in the subconscious and you're sleeping. And it depends on which stage, because most of the time it happens during REM. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how do you differentiate with the people you speak to?
Yeah, so night terrors often happen in children, and one of the distinguishing features is when someone wakes up from a night terror, they often don't even remember what it was they were dreaming. They wake up screaming. A nightmare is what I consider a normal, natural part of sleep. Something like 5 or 6% of all dreams are nightmares. It doesn't mean anything's wrong if you have a nightmare. It does mean there's something that needs to be addressed. By contrast, with the night terror, there's no real material to work with and learn from. It happens in a different state of consciousness. And so, as you said, that's something more to address as a medical issue or, another kind of sleep concern.
Correct. Now, in terms of that blog that I read, what could you tell us a little bit about the insight on that story? Because it was interesting. It was titled, I believe it was titled "Bad Dreams, Good News." I think that's what it was taught. So, tell us a little bit about how did that come about? Because it was a very interesting story. I would advise you to go to Civia's website, and I'm going to copy the description below. I'll also put a link so that people can get to your website. But tell us a little bit about that piece.
Yes, so basically, as I mentioned, I get a lot of questions, and the one that you're referring to was one of them about bad dreams, so-called.
Mm-hmm.
I hesitate to call them bad dreams because, as you said, from my title, they are good for you. They are good news. They are an invitation to explore something more deeply. So as I recall in that particular blog post, somebody was hesitant to come to one of my dream groups, hesitant to want to talk about dreams at all, because she didn't want to face her nightmares.
Oh.
She didn't. And this happens a lot. In fact, for some people, their insomnia is linked to the fact that either consciously or subconsciously, they just don't want to face their nightmares. They don't want to have the possibility even that they'll go to sleep and have one of these frightening dreams. And they really can be scary.
At times they are very scary, and they can also seem very real. I think that's the one thing that when I speak to sleep clients, they constantly tell me, I woke up and my heart was racing and it seemed like I was actually there. And one of the things that Justina and I talked about was visitation dreams versus the regular nightmare that may seem like there's someone in the room with you or there's an awareness. And it was very interesting. What's your perspective in terms of visitation dreams? How do you see them?
So visitation dreams that you're talking about are when we have a dream in which somebody who's passed on, somebody who's died, or it could even be, in my case, when my mom had Alzheimer's, while she was still alive, I'd have visitation dreams with her where we could actually talk to each other.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right? So in either case, it's somebody who you can't normally communicate with, usually somebody who's passed over, and they come to you in the dream, and it feels like a real visit. It feels like you have seen them, you can hear their voice, the quality of their laughter, and you have a conversation. Now, for some people, this is very comforting. They miss their loved one, and now they have another opportunity to connect in a dream. For other people, it's very scary. It can depend on what their beliefs are about the afterlife, or what their relationship was like with the loved one who was visiting them.
So they draw a distinction there between whether it's something because I had the visitation dreams personally, and I saw relatives that were sick or had just passed away in a couple of days, and I wasn't able to say goodbye, and I had the luxury, I say, the gift, right, the blessing to have someone come into your life and have a moment with you that you could get that closure. One of the things that's really interesting is about your book, The Mindful Way to a Good Night's Sleep. You look at sleep a lot differently than most other sleep professionals. And I wanted to know, what was the genesis and why did you decide, because you were a dream expert, right? And you're also someone who is dealing with sleep issues and sleep and helping people with sleep. I don't know if you are are you a licensed sleep coach as well?
No.
Yeah, so we're both on the opposite sides. I'm a sleep coach and certified. You're certified in the dream. So between both of us, we can figure something out here. So what was the genesis of the book? Because it's an interesting whole theme for your book, but what was the genesis of it? How did it come about?
So The Mindful Way to a Good Night's Sleep came about because of really my own journey with sleep and dreams, and frankly, with dealing with life as a person who has a lot of anxiety, who's got a little very mild depression. But these are things that have plagued me all my life. And people think because I've written books about joy and I write about sleep and dreams that I must go to bed every night and sleep like a baby and wake up happy as a lark. And many nights and days that is true. But this all came to me from my own struggles. So when I was a kid, I was that little girl who needed to sleep with a nightlight on and the door open because I had so many scary dreams and nightmares that sleep was terrifying for me. But the interesting thing about me, and I think what brought me along on this journey, is as scary as my dreams were, I also somehow sensed that there was something magical about them. That there was, as often as I had nightmares, I also had funny dreams and crazy dreams, and the whole thing fascinated me from an early age.
And how did you get involved, with taking that experience? For me, for the sleep thing happened for me later in life. I wasn't aware of it until one of my family members got sick. But how did you take the those early childhood kind of influences and really build them up to a place where you dedicated your life's work to this?
Yeah, so what happened was, as I got older and I learned to work with those nightmares, and I learned to turn and face those dream attackers that were plaguing me, I found this deep well of courage within myself. And I got to sort of practice in the dream world. I got to practice fighting back and speaking up. And it empowered me in my waking life. And I always wanted to somehow be able to pass that along to others. And several experiences in my life where I faced really deep trauma or tragedy, my dreams were there to help and guide me through it once I started to learn how to listen to them. And that's informed my work with mindfulness. It's informed my work with connecting with everyday joy, even in really challenging situations like most of us are in these days, these past years.
We can't avoid it.
Right? So learning how to deal with nightmares asleep has helped me be more empowered awake. And it's a gift I've really wanted to share with other people for a long, long time, because we all have this inside of us. We have this treasure trove inside of us, these dream teachers, these dream guides, and just these dreams that are wonderful experiences, even if you never interpret them. that can enhance our lives. So I'm so fortunate because at a certain point in my life, back in about 2009, I decided to really just go all in with my passion for dreams. And that's actually what led me to studying a new approach to sleep, which is a mindful approach, where instead of just sleep hygiene and medicalizing sleep, I look at it as a natural and healthy part of our day, an opportunity to extend our meditation practice, our mindfulness, and bring consciousness to the very act of going to sleep, and entering dreams with awareness and entering sleep with awareness, so we can be empowered, active participants with sleep and dreams instead of just maybe I'll have a good night's sleep and maybe I won't.
Well, it's very interesting. I have a panel coming up. I don't know if you're on Clubhouse. If you're not on Clubhouse, we'll figure it out. We'll get you on there. We're doing a panel on sleep and getting these mindful practices. So I would love to have you be a part of the discussion there. It's going to be wonderful. That's going to be in a couple of weeks or so. Now, let's talk a little bit about something I saw on your website that really just caught my eye. It's a corner of an eye. I'm a bit of a journal junkie, I would say.
Wonderful.
I love journals. And anytime I see someone put together a journal, I ask them, what makes your journal different than everything else that's out there? In your case, more specifically, you have a specific title on your journal, Refresh. You say Dream, Write, Refresh as part of your journal foundations. And so how did you structure the book so that I can do that, so that I can dream, refresh, and journal?
Absolutely. So Dream, Write, Refresh, that's sort of my my guiding principles. So I connect dreaming, writing, and waking up to our everyday joy. And part of the way that we do that is through the dream journal. That's sort of the foundational groundwork for our dreaming and waking up practice. Because ultimately that's what we want to do, isn't it? To wake up to our best lives.
Correct.
So my journal, what's I think different is that I look at sleep, dreams, and waking as one continuous cycle of consciousness and an opportunity to bring mindfulness to the whole cycle of consciousness. So we connect what happens in our waking life to what's reflected and communicated in our dreams. And then we take what we've learned from our dreams and we use that knowledge to make our waking life better. And writing helps us to keep that connection going. It helps us to reflect on the dreams in a very productive way. And it helps us bring those lessons from the dreams forward. I also do writing workshops that are based on dream work, my Dreaming on the Page workshops, where we really learn to use our dream reports, our dream journals, as the seeds for poems and stories, and as non-interpretive dream work, meaning we let the dreams kind of interpret themselves just by the fact of writing about them, thinking about them, and allowing the meanings to rise up.
So let's get back to one of the things that we talked about earlier today. We wanted to talk about nightmares and how people interpret what's in a nightmare. So I was thinking, let's take an example. We have a dark and stormy night, and there are various characters in a darkness, and you can't really see their faces. And there's probably a familiar place that a gas station in the distance, and you are on a bicycle and you're riding toward the gas station. How would I interpret that dream? That was just me on the creative side. I'm also a screenwriter in my old days there, so I definitely visualize everything.
Yeah, it shows. That was great. I could totally picture that nightmare. I think I've had that nightmare. So what I encourage people to do with a nightmare or any dream is to look at each part of the dream and see how it's reflecting some part of yourself or your waking life. So if I'm having a dream, for example, that I'm being chased through that dark and stormy night towards that gas station, perhaps I might ask myself, am I feeling like I'm being chased or pursued, in some aspect of my life? Am I feeling like I'm running away from something?
Very
So
interesting.
I might look at the setting. If it's taking place at a gas station, what does a gas station mean to me?
Correct.
Is this dream trying to tell me something about where I refuel in life? Maybe there's a crisis. If it's a nightmare, there's some crisis in my emotional or spiritual life or my relationships that my dream wants to make me aware of. So is there some kind of crisis? Am I not refueling? Right?
Correct. And what about the characters in
From
the shadows?
Yes. Okay. So the characters are wonderful to work with. This is a little bit maybe counterintuitive, but try to think of every character as some aspect of yourself. So in a nightmare, that can be fun in bright dreams, but in a nightmare, that's challenging because we don't want to think of that attacker as a part of ourself. But you have to get comfortable with metaphors. In what way might I be sabotaging myself? In what way might I be ready to let a part of myself die? If somebody's trying to kill me in a dream, maybe there's an old set of beliefs that doesn't serve me anymore, and it's time to let that die. So there's a part of me that's ready to kill it. Figuratively, we're not talking literally here. We're talking metaphorically, and that's really important to remember.
Well, that was an awesome interpretation of a nightmare. And folks, if, like I said before, I try to bring you the best people to give you the right answers. You see how easily Sylvia was able to just take the nightmare apart. And if she was sitting across from me and I was hearing this, all of a sudden I would have a number of aha moments on the way that this nightmare wasn't really a nightmare, but it was actually a good message. This is what she means when she's talking about good news. You could have good news by being informed. And if you're informed, you're able to then address the waking life issues that are driving those nightmares. Another thing that being from an ethnicity where Italians and Spanish people, we tend to be very should I say, they have a very rigid, should I say, upbringing. And one of the things that's always talked about in these factions and these people is you get the older women and the older men, right, and the old world mentality that say, "I saw your mom or your grandfather dead, and they're going to die," and they interpret that as it's your grandfather when it has nothing to do with you. And I try to explain this to people. How do you go about, because it's difficult, right? If you have a sick parent, if you have someone in your life that you love that can be going through something, then someone comes to you and said, "I had a bad dream about them and they were dying." What do you say to a person like that?
Well, first of all, I empathize because it's very frightening when we have a dream about a loved one being sick or dying.
Correct.
And also, I like to always remember that there's no one-size-fits-all interpretation for a dream. Our cultural beliefs come into play, as you mentioned. I'm really glad you brought that up. Different cultures have different beliefs about dreams.
Absolutely. You go down south and you get a whole bag of and I've seen this. Some family members that live in Georgia, and they have really deep belief systems. And in the South, that's very natural, but for some Northerners like myself, we believe more in a science kind of, our belief system is a little different. And it doesn't mean that we don't have commonalities, but I think that when people come to you with negative information, you have to quickly dissect that it's not your problem. Exactly. It's not that they had a dream about your parent or your family member. I didn't know that until I spoke to Justina. And that's why I was so excited to have you on the show as well, because I this is the stuff that listeners really gotta bite into and listen to. There's a way to solve your sleep issues, whether they are physical, as I talk on the show, if they are sleep apnea issues, if they are medical issues. There is a time and place for you to take medicine for a disorder. And then there's all this other stuff you can do that you can avoid getting worse, and you can actually have a better mindset and have a much more much more positive life experience. So heed the warning. Don't listen to those people that talk to you in negative tones and tell you about what's going on in your life that is of cause for you to worry. If someone is sick in your life, as Sylvia said, we empathize, but that doesn't mean that the dream from someone else is predicting the future. And how do you feel about that also? Sometimes people take dreams and they go, this is a vision of the future. I think that can be 50-50, right? I mean, I think that you make your own future, but what is your interpretation?
Yeah, absolutely. We all have free will. Our dreams do help us look ahead. So I think our dreams can show us possible futures where we might be heading. So, and there's no doubt about it. If you talk to enough people about their dreams, and I've certainly experienced it, and perhaps you have too, and I bet lots of people listening have, that we dream something and then that very thing happens. That does occur. So I tell people, first look at your dreams metaphorically, because 95% of the time that's what they are. Mm-hmm. And then ask yourself, especially a dream that troubles you, what if this is a possible future? What if it is possible that if you keep going the way you're going, you might get sick? Or if you keep going the way you're going, you might enter danger, or a loved one might. So first look at it metaphorically. But then, if really you think this might be showing you a possible future scenario, what steps can you take to make your future a little bit better? Take it as a warning, as an opportunity to make a course correction in your life. We do have free will, and our dreams can help us think about our future in a productive way.
That's fantastic information. Now, let's talk about, again, going down this route where there are people that sometimes, and this is a little bit on the paranormal, but sometimes people will have an accident and they'll go into a short coma. I'm not talking about the long comas, because that's a whole different, that's a whole different thing that happens. But short comas, some people report having very deep visions and dreams. And do you know anything about how, when people have accidents and when the mind is affected by those accidents, how the dreams work in that capacity in that period?
Well, I'm not an expert in that. I've heard and listened to other experts talk about it. And all I'll say about that is that we experience various states of consciousness throughout our lives, including things like trances or hallucinations, dreams. There's a whole spectrum.
Correct.
So I think that what people who are in comas are experiencing isn't exactly like the kind of, dreams that we're experiencing each night. It's a variation. And certainly there's reason to believe, certainly if I think Eben Alexander's work is really interesting in these sort of near-death experience dreams. And I don't know if you would call them dreams or journeys, but there are lots of different things that happen to people that are largely unexplained.
Correct.
And I really encourage people to keep an open mind and a skeptical mind. So be skeptical, ask questions, check out sources, but also keep an open mind, because there's so much we still don't know about human consciousness.
Correct.
It's as, I think it's as exciting a field as space exploration.
Absolutely. I think sleep in general, it's one of those things that it's like landing on the moon. We are just at the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much being revealed. I can't tell you on this show alone. I started the show maybe 6-7 months ago, and the amount of knowledge that I've gained about the sleep industry and all of its different facets. I'd done my own research during being a sleep coach, but this just opened me up completely. And so I meet wonderful people like you that just continue that journey. I enjoy this. This is one of my passions, and I really do enjoy listening from individuals that have had this life experience. Now, let's talk about the book again. Can you give us some examples of some of the chapters? What are people going to find when they open up the book and say, okay, talk to me?
Wonderful. So the mindful way to a good night's sleep, I happen to have a copy here. And the reason I like to show it is because it's full of very short little essays and tips and techniques for what you can do each night. It's a very practical handbook about sleep and dreams. Again, from the perspective of mindfulness, from the point of view of enhancing your nighttime rituals and your nighttime routines, taking what you already do and bringing a sense of awareness, comfort, intention to the process of going to sleep in dreams, almost creating a cozy and sacred routine or ritual around sleep so that you can sleep and dream better and wake up with more sense of joy, purpose, and meaning in your life. So people will get tips, little what I call meditations that you can do in bed, either before sleep to lead into sleep, or when you wake up in the middle of the night and are having trouble falling back asleep. So it's very, very practical and grounded. And I think that's a lot of what people will find, including inspirational quotes and short essays to inspire people to embrace sleep, not as like the last thing we do at the end of the day if we have time, but more as a priority and a time of day that we're looking forward to. And making a special space in our day for. And just like a normal night of sleep includes about a quarter of the time dreaming, so too in this book, about 25% of it is about the experience of dreams, how to interpret your dreams, how to maybe have more good dreams, and what to do when you have scary dreams.
Well, that's awesome. I read a book called Daily Rituals some time ago. And the reason I bring it up is because this book was not meant to be a book on sleep, a book on dreaming. It's a book written, and I was in a writing class many, many years ago when I was told about this book. They were like, "You're an artist. You need to read this Daily Rituals book."
I've read that book.
Yeah, and what's interesting is in the book you see all of these great people, famous people from history. Infamous people too, but it covers all this broad base of people, and it covers their routines, their creative routines. And one of those things was how effective sleep was in all of these people's lives and how they would sleep. Some wouldn't sleep at all, and some would sleep 20 hours. It was such a great book. And everyone's in there. They go over Einstein. They go over all these. And so
there, yeah.
And what you're talking about, you call them meditations. So it just reminded me of one of the stories that I read about how that was so important at the hour to have a meditation. And so I think that your book ties that so well into what most people aren't aware they should be doing. And meditation, I tell people, I don't care when you meditate. You can meditate first thing at the crack of dawn when no one's around, when you're still haven't washed your face and you're half asleep, or you can meditate when you're in a quiet space. You can meditate anywhere. Meditation is going to improve your sleep. I can't say this enough. Meditation improves your sleep, and the reason it does is very simple. You quiet the mind. And that is the key to really going down the doorway of better sleep. Well, I want to really thank you. It was wonderful having you on the show today. And I'd like to invite you back. We have that panel coming up. I'm going to reach out to you offline, and we'll make sure that we connect so that you can be part of the Sleep Guys panel. I appreciate it so much, and I look forward to seeing you and speaking with you in the near future.
Thank you. Me too. And thank you for the beautiful work you're doing, inviting people into a good and productive night's sleep. So
I think that everyone deserves it. And one of our favorite closing mottos is, remember to breathe easy and sleep tight. Until next time.
That concludes this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed your sleep dose. Find us on Instagram at The Sleep Guy, and be sure to join our mailing list at deepsleepglobal.com. Until next time, sleep tight.